Unfunded mandates. It's mandatory, but it's unfunded. Is the response that I got from a student at the Missouri University. And the unfunded mandate, it's mandatory, but it's unfunded, right? Remember that. Involves education, mental health, and environmental protection agency, which is under the guise of air quality control standards. It's mandatory, but it's unfunded, so therefore there is no funding available. And let's see, Medicaid actually is under the unfunded mandate. One of them. I believe there's 174 of them at this time, and the first ones were. Let's see here. I did see something about Social Security, which is they have horizontal and vertical establishments of these mandates. But if it's unfunded, that means it's unfunded. There's no money involved. I mean, it's basically kind of like what they call voluntary, obligatory, duty to care type stuff. You should do it not because there's money in it. It's because it's something that's a responsibility, not necessarily a commercial entity. A lot of these unfunded mandates, though, have a turn of under the guise of civil rights during the 50s and 60s, especially around the late 60s. And then during the 80s, during the Reagan era, right around the end of the time they started issuing more of these unfunded mandates through George W. Bush Sr., 1991 is when 27 of these went into effect, and all of a sudden we have something called the Desert Storm? Remember we had a war, when President Clinton was in office. That was the year I was to graduate high school, and, everybody was trying to push me to go into the military, and I wasn't buying it. So, but yeah, the year that some of these unfunded mandates took effect was recently. We have Reagan pushing some of these unfunded mandates. He actually, issued the war on drugs. And if anybody knows anything about the word drug, it comes from the word dry goods, which comes from, plants and sundries and things like that, which I believe falls under the Food and Drug Administration. So if you use dried plant materials for various things, they're going to go to war against you. And so it's a war on plants. If you think about it in its natural essence, it's man's use of these plants and materials. But like I said, the unfunded mandate has this ring of Medicaid to it and civil rights and a bunch of other stuff. And they want us to do all this stuff for free, because it's mandatory. Like I said, it's obligation. It's an obligation. It's a duty, basically. Falls under duty to care. So if you're, in the medical community and you're going, well, as I'm reading Medicaid standards, it says the federal government will pay half of it, and the state's supposed to pay the other half. Well, every time I've seen people use Medicaid, they are stuck with paying the other half, and I'm sitting there going, well, how come the state's not paying it? But, when we do research on the amount of how much, if you do have a job, you're working and stuff, and you get a paycheck or something of that nature, it said that they were taking almost up to 30% out of everybody's check through taxes. Well, if you're under Social Security, you're exempt because you're disabled, you're a widow or an orphan. Right? So you're not paying your taxes, you're getting exempt, and you get that back. But if you're disabled, how in the hell are you working? You see where I'm going with this? But anyway, it's unfunded. So you should be working for free. And that's the thing. So if you're under one of these unfunded mandates, you're a volunteer. Basically, you're working for free for something that's a responsible duty of every man, woman, and child. That's supposed to be in effect. That was my understanding. Well, as of now, I do believe we have 174 of these unfunded mandatory. It says law, but they keep using these different words. You have law, regulations, statutes, things like that. And So I'm having a hard time trying to decipher some of this because they keep jumping around with all these different terminologies of what it is, actually. So if it's a mandatory obligation, it's the law. Well, we have libraries full of these books that talk about laws or customs and usage, customs. So it's an obligatory responsibility of a man, woman, and child to do these things that are called unfunded mandates. But the word man is in there, so obviously you know who's getting screwed on this one. It's unfunded mandate, and I heard some terms about unfunded mandates before. Where I'm from, I was thinking it was, a woman going, well, I went on a date with a man and there was no money in it. See, and that's the turn of events that I'm actually starting to see is, it's something we should do as a responsibility, but if there's no money in it, then nobody wants to do it because it doesn't pay anything. Under the guise of civil rights and, voting rights and, here we go with all this other stuff, Medicaid and things like that. So that's the topic for the day, and I thought I'd just touch on that. I've been doing some research on it, reading it. I'm going to read some more on it tonight. But, to start things off with, it's called Unfunded Mandate. It's mandatory, and there's nothing in it. There's no money in it. There's no pay. It's free. So Medicaid, but yet they're paying half of it, and then your state's supposed to be responsible for paying the other half. And I'm sitting there going, for what? There's 174 of them. So if they're paying, there's money in it, I'm supposed to be working for free, then how am I supposed to support myself by doing this stuff, but yet I get nothing out of it? It doesn't make any sense to me. So we're going to read a little bit more on it tonight and see what we get.